This is the 18th South Pacific Classic, Australia's annual international 10-pin bowling tournament. 58 ladies and 64 men began bowling in the finals on Thursday morning. We're now down to the grand finals with just 3 men and 3 ladies left. And for the first time, we have a visiting overseas bowler in both grand finals. In the men's section, we have Ollie Reformado, who's the leading qualifier. He comes from the Philippines, and opposed to him in these grand finals will be Ian Bradford of Victoria and Brian Bridges of New South Wales. In the ladies' final, the visiting bowler is Kathy Solis, who is also from the Philippines, but she qualified in 2nd position for the grand finals. The leading qualifier is Jeanette Baker from South Australia, and in the 3rd position is Louise Wallace from Victoria. The tournament director and former winner of this event is Steve Mackey. Steve, what's the standard of bowling been like, and what sort of finals are we in for?
Well, we're in for a very good final. The 6 bowlers have all got different styles. Bradford averaged 214 in the qualifying. I expect him to do very well today.
And would you like to make a tip?
Well, Bradford looks pretty good. He's bowled solidly all day, and well, Jeanette Baker's really come good in the last couple of games, so I think they're my 2 picks.
Good. Well, we're going to depart from tradition today, and for the first time, we're going to see the men's grand final first. And here are the 2 bowlers who finished in positions 2 and 3. On the left is Brian Bridges. Both bowlers will be allowed 1 practice ball on each of the 2 lanes, and it's Brian Bridges first. He had a high game in this tournament in the match play of 235, and he's averaged 205.
And Brian Bridges won the 1982 Melbourne 10-pin Cup against a top-class field a few months ago, and he was the 1981 Australian Bowler of the Year.
Right, well, his opponent in this first match, which is a series of 2 games, total pinfall to count, is Ian Bradford from Victoria, and he finished in number 2 spot.
And Ian, a member of the 1982 Victorian Rockway team, that's the interstate bowling team, and he was runner-up in the 1982 Under-21 Melbourne 10-pin Cup.
Ian Bradford of Victoria, by the way, had a high game in the match play section of this tournament of 245, and he has averaged 214. That's excellent, Steve.
Yes, a top-class effort by Ian. All the Victorian contingent here today were riding him home in the last few games, and he was a bit unlucky to get knocked off the top perch.
Brian Bridges of New South Wales.
Well, Bridges averaged 205 today with a high game of 235 in the match play. Pretty solid all day. Was throwing quite a few balls across the head pin today, but cashing with strikes, so should be a good match, but Bradford bowled very well.
And the game underway. Both now have delivered their first balls of the first of these 2 games. A strike for Bradford. And a spare for Bridges. And just remember that in scoring and 10-pin bowling, a spare, which is all pins down for with the first 2 balls, a spare counts 10 plus the next ball. A strike counts 10 plus the next 2.
Right, Bradford in the 2nd frame now. Bad luck for Bradford. Ball went nicely into the pocket, but left a 4-pin. Bridges now in frame 2. And 9 pins for Bridges.
So in the first frame, Bridges has 19. Bradford has a strike in the first frame, and a spare in the second for a score of 20 in the first frame.
Bridges going for the 10-pin. That's a corner pin, a difficult one for right-handers. Not too much of the lane to play with. Bradford's 22 years old and qualified for the South Pacific Classic by chasing all the spots around in the various Victorian centres. He had an excellent average of 197. over more than 80 games. Very determined. And an excellent shot. Very lucky one for Brian that time.
So Brian Bridges of New South Wales, 39 in the second frame with that strike, and there it was, went in on the Brooklyn side, Steve.
Yes, only just got the 6 pin out. That was the last pin to fall. Bradford now left a 4 pin on this lane the first time he went. See if he makes a slight adjustment.
Bradford is 40 in the second frame. Bridges again. Yes, and that's 2 in a row for Bridges. So he's a possible 69 in the third frame. Oh, and there's an open frame for the Victorian, which gives him a 68 in the fourth frame.
Well, these are 2-game matches today, so it's not quite as desperate as it may have seemed there. He does have another game and a half to go. Bridges on 2 strikes in a row, looking for a third. That looks good.
Yes, 69 in the third frame with strikes in the fourth and fifth. Brian Bridges. Bradford 68 in the fourth frame with that open fourth frame.
And right in the pocket.
Bradford again.
Bradford a little bit too fast in his approach that time. Got to the foul line ahead of the ball and didn't lift it properly. And it stayed out to the right of the head pin. But a pretty easy spare to cover. John, the 1 and 2 right in the middle of the lane. Shouldn't have any trouble picking this up with a normal strike shot ball. And he's covered it well. First time on television for Ian Bradford. ABC viewers will remember Brian Bridges bowled against Chris Batson last September in the Bowling World Cup telecast and was beaten on television. He was saying earlier that he was hoping today he'd be able to come good.
Well, he's away to a pretty good start. 3 strikes in a row. Oh, and he's left himself a split this time.
That's it. It's the washout. Probably a little bit too fast as Bradford bowled.
Bradford 68 in the fourth frame with a spare in the fifth, needing a strike. Yes, and he's got it. So he's now 88 in the fifth frame. Bradford 88 in the fifth with a strike in the sixth.
Bridges hoping to do this. Oh,
very close.
Well, that's the way to go for it. You've got to send the 1 pin into the 10. The ball will not bounce off the 1 pin into the 10, so he had the right idea, but the pin flew around the back of the 10 pin. So Bradford now with another life. Needs a double to catch up the leeway.
Yes, Bridges is 124 in the sixth frame. That open sixth frame, 124. Bradford 88 in the fifth with a strike in the sixth. So he's a possible 108 in the sixth frame.
Well, Bridges, another Brooklyn shot. He said the lanes were a little bit dry today, but judging on the averages bowled by the finalists, I would think that they were pretty good scoring conditions.
Oh, and that's fair, nicely picked up there by Bradford. Ian Bradford of Victoria. He goes to 108 in the sixth frame with a spare in the seventh, as against Bridges 124 in the sixth, and this should be a spare in the seventh as well. Yes.
And there we have the score, 16 pins the difference. So Bradford and Bridges both with spares in the 7th frame. 16 pins. It's a 2-game total pinfall match. The winner goes on to meet Oli Reformado, the 18-year-old Filipino sensation, in the grand final in the next match. Bradford looks good here.
Yes, all the way.
Beautiful release. He got the ball right out on the lane.
Bradford 128 in the 7th frame with a strike in the 8th.
Bridges looking for a strike to stay close, and it's a light hit but carries the 10-pin late.
And Bridges 144 in the 7th frame with a strike in the 8th.
And let's have a look at Bridges. His ball goes into the pocket. It's a light hit, carries the 5-pin, and the 6-pin takes the 10. That's the 10-pin just falling now.
So still 16 pins in it. Bridges leading by 16 pins, 144 to 128 in the 7th frame. Both have strikes in the 8th frame.
Got the ball out on the lane very well. Oh, beautiful shot under pressure.
There's Bradford's score with strikes in the 8th and 9th.
Bridges needed a double there. Bradford can catch up quite a few pins here, and Brian has left himself a sleeper spare. We call it a sleeper because there's 1 pin directly behind the other.
Which means he's got to hit that 3-pin, which is the one in front, straight on. Carry it back to take the sleeper. And he's done it.
Yes, they can be quite tricky. There's 22 inches between that front pin and the back pin, and the ball can bounce off in that distance of space, and
of course can hit the front pin off on an angle.
In other words, I think we're trying to say it's a tricky spare, John.
It certainly is, yes. So Bridges is 164 in the 8th frame with a spare in the 9th. And Bradford is 157 in the 8th frame. Strike in the 9th, and he's got 9 pins down with the first ball in the 10th frame. Or another strike for Bridges. 184 in the 9th frame. So he's got a possible 214 here.
Oh, Ian.
Bradford has missed that one badly.
And that's
which gives him a game of 185. Total 185 for Bradford as against a possible 214 for Bridges.
Bridges' experience showing through there with a strike in the 1st of the 10th when Bradford failed to get a strike. Bridges put him under pressure by getting the first ball strike, and Bradford capitulated by missing the 6-pin.
And missing that strike, Bridges now comes down to a possible 204. He picks up the 3 pins, which he does. He scores a 204. So Bridges 204. Bradford 185, which is a lead of 19 pins now to Brian Bridges going into the 2nd of this 2-game series.
Well, Bradford's going to have to get his act together. Bridges, always the tactician, wants to apply pressure straight away, jumps straight up on that lane and ready to go. He wants a strike to open up, but that's not a good shot. Didn't get any fingers on the ball. Let's see how Bradford can start applying his own pressure. A determined look on his face, but not quite determined enough.
He again crossed over, hit the headpin just to the left, crossing over to what they call the Brooklyn side. And Bridges spares the first frame of the 2nd game. Now, Bradford missed this one a short time ago.
He didn't miss it that time, and really quite a pity that he missed it in the first game. He would have only been 8 pins behind, but 19 down, a man of Bridges' experience. Last year's bowler of the year, a chance to go to the World Cup. He's going to be hard to beat.
$17 to Bridges in the first frame with his spare in the first frame, and 7 pins down with the next ball. That's a total of 17 to Bridges in the first frame of the second game.
Bradford keeping his head down through the shot. That's a good ball.
And there's 3 pins picked up. 20 in the first frame with a spare in the second.
And here's a light hit in the pocket. Just hit the head pin, but the ball's got plenty of mix on it and takes the 8 pin as the last pin to go. And Bridges, well, you might notice the way he spared that. We might be able to have another look at that spare. Bridges, ball carried to the left of the head pin, and therefore he couldn't miss that spare. That was the way to approach that one. Bradford's got a chance now to pick up some of this 19 pins if he can get a strike. Needed that strike, and he got it. Good pressure ball. Pressure's back on the experienced Bridges now. And that's the way to counter. No problems with that one. Let's not have another look at that.
That looked good all the way down the lane, didn't it?
Well, here it is right now, deep into the 1-3 pocket, right on the 17th board. There's 42 boards across the lanes, and a strike ball like that would have hit right on 17. So Bradford now applied the pressure. Bridges countered with another strike, and Bradford going for a turkey. 3 strikes in a row.
Bridges is 37 in the second frame. Oh, and Bradford is 49 in the second frame, so he's picked up 12 of those 19 pins he was down. He's only down 7 pins now.
Well, Bridges, that's the baby split, the 3 and the 10. Not easy.
Again, he crossed over to the left-hand side of the head pin. He seems to be doing that quite a lot, Steve.
Yes, he's playing a different line on the TV pair than what he was bowling earlier on. And Bradford a spare in the fourth. Well, this is interesting. Bridges must spare this. He's got to put the ball in between the two, but he hasn't.
There's an open frame to Bridges, which gives him a score of 65 in the fourth frame, as against a possible 89 to Bradford, which would put him in front.
Yes, anything more than 5 pins for Bradford now puts him in front in this 2-game total pinfall match. So Bradford will be hoping, of course, for the maximum pinfall on this delivery.
Well, he's got 9, so he goes to 88 in the fourth frame, as against 68, was it 65 for Bridges? So that puts Bradford in front for the first time by 4 pins in the 2-game series. And there's that baby split again for Bridges.
Yes, Brian's a little bit out of timing on that. There it goes, high on the head pin. A bit lucky to get the 7 pin out too.
Meanwhile, Bradford has spared the 5th frame.
Let's see if he's made an adjustment now. Oh, Brian missed the baby split twice. There's a big lead now for Bradford, and he hasn't really done much to earn it. Bridges opening 2 frames in a row, both on the baby split, and he'll be thinking about that predicament that he's in.
So that's 74 to Bridges in the 5th frame, with 2 open frames, identical scores in the 4th and 5th frames. 74 now, Bridges in the 5th frame, as against 106 for Bradford. So So that's 32, less than 90. That's a lead of 13 pins now to Bradford.
And Brian very lucky not to leave the 310 again. He's in some trouble. Bradford's got an easy spare to go for here. The 4 and the 7 right across the left-hand side. No problems with that. He's just got to stay clean now. Bridges is in trouble form-wise. He's a little bit out of timing. Yes, he's
just got the side of that one.
Yes, that time on the side shot, we could see that. Well, Bridges was out of timing when he let that ball go. He got to the foul line ahead of the ball, and consequently it had to drop out of his hand. Didn't get the fingers on it that he normally does. Bradford's got a pretty handy lead.
Yes, well, he's a possible 126 here in the 6th frame. Well, he's 124 in the 6th frame for Bradford. As against 91 in the 6th frame for Bridges. So the lead has been increased. Bradford leading now by 14 pins overall.
Well, let's see if he can spare this baby split, the one that Brian missed twice, to let him into the match. And that's the way to do it, Brian.
Very nicely done.
Good spare from Brian Bridges. Covered it beautifully. That's a tricky one. There's big money at stake in this match. The loser of the match will assume 3rd place in the tournament and take home $1,200. The winner of the match goes on to meet Oli Reformado, the top qualifier, the Filipino boy. And they'll be bowling for a total of $4,000 in prize money and the possibility of 2 overseas trips. And Bradford probably thinking of that right now and applied a little bit more pressure.
So he's 144 in the 7th frame with a strike in the 8th. And Bridges comes back with a strike.
And that was a strike for Bradford. Very late falling 7-pin. And while we were watching that replay of Bradford's strike, Bridges struck himself. But 14 pins the difference, and only the 9th and 10th frames to go. So Bradford looking reasonably safe at this stage, but anything can happen. Needs a strike to shut the gate. He needed that one.
144 in the 7th frame with strikes in the 8th and 9th. Bridges is 111 in the 7th with a strike in the 8th.
Really needs a strike. He needed that.
He's got it. Both have.
Let's have a look at. Yes, there's Bridges. A light hit, carried all the pins off the wall. A strike ball only hits 4 pins. The pins do the rest of the work, and we certainly saw it then. Well, Bradford now a great chance to go into the title match. A strike here will shut the door. Plenty of concentration. Looks a good release, but out the window. Well, Bridges lives again.
So that's 171 in the 8th frame for Bradford.
Bridges talking to himself. He's trying to psych himself up, and Bradford couldn't bring it up. Failed to hit the head pin. Bridges. This has got to be a strike. And he's left that baby split
goodness.
again.
That's what, the 3rd time he's left that. Well, he's now 139 in the 8th frame, as against 171 in the 8th frame for Bradford.
They're certainly not bowling as well in this match as they did in the match play rounds, but there's a lot of tension out here today. We've had gigantic crowds all week filling the Bankstown Bowl. And that's just enough. Big sigh of relief for Ian. And Brian spared it this time. Well, if he could have done that the other 2 times, he certainly would have won this match. But Brian Bridges will finish 3rd in the tournament for a $1,200 prize. And this young man, Ian Bradford, up now to bowl his bonus ball in the 10th frame, will go on to win the match and challenge the 2nd youngest bowler in the tournament, Ollie Reformato. Well, that's 207.
207 for Ian Bradford, and Bridges a 175 for a total 379 in the 2 games, as against a 392 total pinfall in the 2 games for the winner, Ian Bradford. So what that's a difference of 13 pins. 13 pins win in the 2-game series to Ian Bradford, who now goes on to challenge Ollie Reformato, the leading qualifier for the